Well, I couldn't have gotten through 8 years in the White House without my big brother. I mean, that's another sort of unusual aspect to our lives. Our relationship was this whole, you know, being married to the president of the United States thing
Yeah.
that none of us kind of banked on. I mean, we knew Barack was smart and, ambitious, but, I think, but you talked me into supporting his run.
I did.
And he was smart enough to know that he needed to come to you and sell you on the idea. So tell folks, what did he say and what you said to me?
So,
because I was definitely like, nope, no way. This is crazy. We've done enough crazy stuff.
That's right. That's right. And, everything happened so fast because Barack went from a state senator to a U.S. senator. And next thing you know, people were saying, this guy should run for president. And you were like, no, not doing it. You had grown up with Fraser Robinson. You wanted your girls to have sort of a similar upbringing with a father who would come home from work and play catch and take them to the park and do all these things. And Barack came to me and he's like, I can't convince your sister to go along with this. And I'm like, whoa, go along with what? And it's like, I think I'm going to run for president. And I was like, what? I wouldn't go along with it. And I said to him, I said, listen, what you have to do is, first of all, let me talk to her. You don't talk to her. Let me talk to her. No, it wasn't that. I said, I said, if we can get mom on this, our mom, Marion Robinson, if we can get her on board for this, which she was not on board for it, we might have a chance of getting Misha on. And then I said, let me talk to Misha. And that's when I came and talked to you and just gave you your advice that you had given me back pretty much about following your passion and doing the things you love. But I think the thing that pushed it over the top was I convinced you to not penalize him for being really good at what he does.
Black women, what the fuck is going on and shit? I think you guys done built yourself out of the game and shit, okay? And, been a little burnt out lately. And, one of my friends' channels seems to have just disappeared out of nowhere and shit. Kind of, it's a little blue, So, I was looking at, I was getting up doing, making a video, right? Got a video on tap, right? A couple of them actually. I was looking at this, Passport OG's recent video, and there's a clip in there of the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, talking to her brother about how she had to be convinced to support her husband for the presidency and shit, right? And they just made it all about her, and I thought it was a damn shame that they would air something like this. They just don't care. There's no accountability anywhere, right? And I remember back in the, a couple of years ago, Jonathan Majors was getting shit for telling his, narcissistic white girlfriend to be Coretta Sky King or some shit like that. And I just thought that it cannot happen. Okay, you need 2 slaps on each side of your face, especially telling that to somebody outside the community. But like Coretta Scott King and Betty Shabazz and the women of that, that cut are never coming back and shit. Okay? And it's not black men's fault. Right? It's black women's fucking fault. They didn't create any new Coretta Scott Kings or Betty Shabazz's and shit. Everybody want to be a star. Everybody's doing selfies and shit. I recently saw a video of that politician that tin can politician Jasmine Crockett doing the Kendrick Lamar dance, the Not Like Us dance. And I'm like, man, you have no no discretion, no, you know, professional discernment about how you look to the world and shit. How you make black people look to the world, and I feel like this is the same argument that could be directed at Michelle Obama, who recently snubbed her own husband, and didn't go to the presidential inauguration and shit. I felt like it was her duty to go there, even if, her political interests were not, you know, voted in. Okay, and they weren't voted in because the prior administration did a horrible job of managing the country and shit, and of even reaching the people and keeping their constituents, at least complacent and shit, right? If we're talking about, my supposed ethnic community and shit. But yeah, I was listening to this shit, and it makes me sick because a lot of our women like to start sentences off like this. As a black woman, I'm like, what about we're black people and shit? When are you motherfucking, let me stop. When are you women gonna start saying black people instead of black women and shit? It's like we get mad at, white people and they say all lives matter and shit. You saying that shit as a black woman or this or black males or anything like that is akin to that. Okay, it's a slap in the face. It's bigoted along gender lines and shit. And I'd look at Michelle Obama and she make me sick and shit because she don't hold her husband down. She don't have no political grace and shit. And I don't care what he does, but what they do behind closed doors. He's actually gay and banging into one white dude's name shall not be mentioned because I want the FBI coming in here. You know, I don't care what your husband is doing, okay? But when I was listening to that shit, I had shades of Jada Pinkett Smith on that Red Table Talk with Will Smith and shit, even though Obama wasn't there. I had shades of that, just that evil, like, stark look on their face and shit. And it still my resolve that, the only thing that, men can actually do is steal them out off the table, get them off the card table and shit, because they're not, they're not for us and shit. They're their women and shit. They're nobody's women and shit. That's why they don't get married. That's why they having all these goddamn problems and shit. And nobody seems to give a fuck and shit. Because they've been doing the most on the world stage and shit. And the people are getting fucking tired of them. Right? And it's just gonna get worse and shit. And don't take their ass back in the house. This is the former first lady. Alright? He was married to the president. He was in the White House for 8 years. He is, despite whatever he might do in private, I'm no fan of him. Despite any of that shit, you can't hold him down. You can't fucking hold him down. You was in the fucking White House. What were you gonna do if you wasn't married to him and shit? Okay, we know about your fucking career. Nobody gives a fuck. There are legions of Michelle Obamas out there. Right? You're not the best looking either. Okay. Right? Not the best looking and shit. And it's just ridiculous. Like, I understand all the pressure, the political pressure and everything, but the least you could do is obey the vows of your marriage and shit. Love, honor, and cherish and shit. And they need to bring back obey. When I got married, I did love, honor, and cherish too. Alright? When I got married. I'm just laughing thinking about that shit. Because, I have a decent post relationship with my wife as much as could be expected and shit. Right? But whether your marriage is intact or not, you are demonstrating to women that it's okay to be, it's okay to be out of pocket and shit and to be off cold. Right? You can't hold them fucking down and shit. I have to look at you and your sexually suspect brother sit up there and pontificate on, how your participation, by, laying on your back and cocking your legs up and shit, theoretically. How that paved the road for Obama to get into the White House and shit. He could have picked another dark-skinned black woman. He didn't have to pick you, right? He could have picked another dark-skinned black woman. He could have picked a more feminine-looking black woman, right? He picked you, right? And it don't matter if he had white girlfriends before he was with you. Okay, you motherfuckers get with all races of men. Maybe become practice girls. Let's just be honest and shit. And then you expect somebody to give you your flowers. But you give, black men get a lump of coal every day from you motherfuckers. And I thought it was sad, man. I felt a twinge of pain. Not really for Obama, just for, black love in general. Because people were holding you guys up as some gold standard and shit. but you've gone out of your way to be a fucking rebel. Why did you do this? Why can't you just get a divorce? Like a straight up divorce. You're a goddamn lawyer. You can file the paperwork and have them sign this shit, and you guys can go your separate way. And then you can run your mouth as much as you like and be, people are just taking some. You're a bitter Betty. You ain't not a Betty Shabazz. That's a queen. Okay, Coretta Scott King. That's a queen and shit. Fred Hampton's wife, who's laying up pregnant when he was getting plugged and shit while he was laying. They were shooting the shit out of him. His wife, his pregnant wife's laying there. She's a queen. Yeah, that's a ride or die right there. When you in handcuffs, over almost 9 months pregnant and shit, getting fingerprinted and shit, and then they let your ass go because, reasons, I guess. His son is not in politics. Shit. And I just one day, I always have a tear in my eye when I think about Fred Hampton and shit, and how they were so scared of him. They killed him before he could even come into his own. Really, It's like you women, y'all killing y'all sons before they can even think about what they want to be or what they want to do in their life and shit. Then you sit up and complain about your dirty works, your wet works in our community. How you do, shit that is counterproductive to our people and shit, and why we can't get a foothold economically or otherwise and shit. Now you have to sit up here because you're bored and shit. You're not rich enough. You don't have enough bags of money. You need to get out there and do something and shit. You're not. Apparently, you're not woman enough to run for the presidency yourself and shit. You could have came in front of Kamala's fucking ass, and you would have had a better chance of winning the White House instead of her fucking ass. Nobody believes in you because you are a bad faith actor. You couldn't even do your job and show up with your husband to Donald Trump's fucking inauguration. I don't care about the scores of black women that thought that was cool because they're the ones that's sitting in a fucking petri dish with a Tupperware lid on it, suffering, becoming homeless, living in their goddamn cars, and getting into their mid-50s and north, having artificial insemination, and having babies with developmental issues and shit. Like, we don't have enough fucking problems and shit without you being up in your feelings because you want to be the man. And some people think you're a man. They think you have a penis. All right? If you do have a penis, I'll just, flip that bitch out and shit on it's not shocking, okay? The quality of, this country is in the toilet right now because of selfish, self-absorbed, narcissistic people like yourself, okay? You had one job and shit, and you fucking failed. All right? You're supposed to hold the line, bitch. All right? Now understand all that bullshit. You were well compensated for all the emotional abuse you took while you was in the White House all those 8 years, and none of that shit came from your husband. And I don't care if he's down low. Just hold him down, Hold him down. I'm sure you had your side piece. So what you bitching about? Okay, you gave him 2 kids. He gave you 8 years in the White House and wealth, untold wealth that you wouldn't have been able to accumulate otherwise. And you want to bitch about your husband and men in general and shit. You can't get a bag without a man's help. All right? And I don't care what no woman has to say about that. All right? Even Oprah got financial advice from Bill Cosby about signing her own checks and shit, even though she don't want to admit it, okay? In your face. That's a custard pie in your bitch ass face, Michelle. All right? You should be ashamed of yourself for throwing your husband under the bus, who I don't even like. Funny, when I got married, my father-in-law gave me a watch. He gave me a watch with Obama in it, like a big watch. It looks like a normal watch, and I looked at it and it had Obama in there. His picture there. And I was like, what the fuck? I said, why you give me this shit? He said, when you get your head on straight, I'll give you a Rolex. That's what the guy told me and shit. Maybe, I wish I had that watch. I would mail it to you, so you can wear it and understand where everything that's ever been good in your life came from and shit. Because, if you're not going to give your fucking husband his grace, then other people have to and shit. But I don't want to, okay? Because he did damage to the black community and shit. And you're doing even more damage. You're finishing the job and shit by stoning up and telling these women that it's okay to continue burning this bitch down.